Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to attend my session today. And thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here at LogTech Asia amongst all these great speakers and innovators from our space. So thank you very much. Today I'm going to be talking about the top trends to watch in the LogTech sector. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll get a better insight into what these trends are, how the LogTech sector has been changing over time, the future of LogTech, and how you can kind of capitalize on these technology trends for your own business. Whether you're a logistics company or a technology solutions provider, how can you actually utilize these technology trends for your business? As always, if there's any questions or comments throughout my presentation, feel free to post them here and I can reply to you in real time. So before we start, just an introduction about myself. My name is Shiv. I'm co-founder of Fleetbase Private Limited. We are a logistics technology provider based here in Singapore. So we provide logistics operations platforms and also developer tools. So any developers looking to build logistics or supply chain applications can use Fleetbase's APIs and frameworks to expedite that build out. And so it's done in a faster and more cost-effective way. At the end of the presentation, I'll give a little bit more insight into Fleetbase and the kind of products and services that we offer. I wanted to kick things off with a survey that was conducted by Deloitte and MHI in 2020. So this survey was across 1,000+ supply chain professionals about the adoption, which technologies these companies were adopting right now, and also which technologies they think they'd be adopting in the next 6 years. So as we can see, cloud computing and storage is number one on that list, with around 56% of companies actually adopting that technology. That's due to grow to about 91% over the next 6 years. And what the report actually showed was there was a 4-stage process which companies would adopt a lot of these technologies. Number one would be through cloud computing and storage. Once that's kind of been achieved, then they can start to tap into their IoT devices and collect that data. Once they've collected that data and starts to automate a lot of these processes, the amount of data which can be used and then you can get insights on that increases. So cloud computing and storage is definitely the first step. Then moving on to predictive analytics and AI. So I don't think I'll be able to deep dive into all of these particular technologies in this presentation, but I'll definitely do my best to touch on as many as possible. What I thought would be good was to segregate between software and hardware, and maybe a little bit easier to kind of digest. So let's get into the top trends from a software perspective. So number one is obviously SaaS, which is software as a service. So in this day and age, the days of having physical servers and databases for applications, kind of moving away from. Cloud-based and SaaS products are a lot more popular across the supply chain, whether that's in last mile, shipping applications, haulage operating systems. The SaaS model is very popular. It's a lot more scalable and cost effective than physical setups. Once, as we mentioned, you have that kind of cloud infrastructure and insight into your data, you can then start to do your predictive analytics, AI and data analytics. That also ties in with the IoT devices, as I mentioned, which are getting more sophisticated as well. Then we move down to blockchain. So I know everybody, or a lot of people, have been thinking blockchain is a little bit of a buzzword over the last few years. What's happening now is that companies who may have had a kind of smoke screen with blockchain, they're starting to die out, I guess. And there's companies which are actually looking to build entire applications on the blockchain. So these are companies who have a real solid logistics applications, can utilize the blockchain technologies very well. So I think in the next kind of few years, you'll start to see some really, really cool concepts and ideas coming out, which are being built on the blockchain. Then we move to the right-hand side with microservices. So applications and software which is being developed today is kind of built in more of a microservice architecture rather than a monolithic architecture. So what does that mean? So a monolithic architecture is where you have quite a heavy legacy style system, which is very hard to make changes. It may affect a lot of different parts of that application. Microservices is more done on a modular approach. So from a development perspective, if you're making changes or you're adding new features, you can add that feature to that particular module. You have to take into account the whole application, which is easier as well for users. They can subscribe to individual modules rather than having to subscribe to a large kind of overall system. Moving down into APIs. So I wanted to segregate them out between APIs for integration and APIs for development. So as you know, through the whole logistics processes, there's a lot of different parties involved, a lot of systems which needs to get updated and talk to one another. That's why the trend for APIs which are built for integration is very common these days. I wanted to make the difference for development as well, because there is APIs which are coming out from logistics and supply chain aspects, which makes it easier to actually build these logistics applications. And then, following that, developer communities is only natural once the industry kind of matures. There's a lot more developers working in the space, exchanging ideas, communicating a lot more. So expect the developer communities to increase as well. I wanted to do a little deep dive into APIs. So, this term gets thrown around quite a lot. Maybe some of you don't know exactly what an API is. So an API is an application programming interface. So a good way, which it was explained to me, was, if you think of an API as a waiter in a restaurant, you put your request to the waiter. You would then go to the kitchen, and then your food would be made, and then there'd be a response, or the food would come back to your table. That's essentially what an API does. It's a communication between two systems, send a request, and then send a response back. There's three different types of APIs. Firstly, we have internal APIs. Internal APIs are, let's take a transport management system, for example. You may have a web application for the operations, and then a mobile application for the drivers. So each of these applications will actually talk to one another and have an API which communicates that data between the two. So it's an example of an internal API. A partner API is usually two third-party kind of applications or software where there's an agreement, there's a standard set of documentation which you can integrate these two APIs together. So it may be that it's a haulage operating system which needs to get integrated into an accounting system. So each would have its own API and its own protocols for that particular integration. So that's an example of a partner API. And then we move on to public APIs. So this could be, for example, a port which has an open API for individuals to consume, which may give insight into the vessel schedule for that particular port, the vessels coming in and out. But that data is available to the public, so you can integrate that into your system and then run any kind of analytics or manipulate that data how you see fit. So it may be a good idea for you to see what kind of APIs you're currently using within your business. Is there any other APIs which you can utilize to kind of improve your offering or solution? That may be from a research perspective, streams of data which you can integrate in to give you a better insight for yourself and for your customers, or even platforms which you can plug into to offer your solution through an API, to potentially gain more business. So it's worth definitely seeing what APIs you're currently using and what ones are out there for you to consume as well. As we move on to the top trends in LogTech for hardware. So the three different sectors on the left, robotics, IoT devices, and drones. You probably have heard all of these before. I don't think it will be anything new. However, when I was kind of doing this presentation, there was a few areas within these which I thought were quite interesting to share with you guys. The first one is robotics. So Of course, we've been going through a challenging time over the last 12 to 18 months with COVID. So we see a lot of warehousing operations trying to reduce the staff which are on site at any one time, and also to reduce that human-to-human contact. So the actual use of automated guided vehicles, robots to do pick and packing processes, becoming a lot more is a lot more needed for reducing that human-to-human contact. So I guess you'd see an upward trend there. There's also another concept, which is robots as a service, which I thought was quite interesting. We briefly touched on software as a service. Now we're speaking about robots as a service. So this is essentially where you can subscribe to a company which will provide you these robotics, provide you updates in the software, and also do the maintenance and the scheduling for these particular pieces of hardware, rather than you having to, do that initial outlay and then also manage that kind of yourself. So I just thought that was a pretty cool concept. It's good to keep an eye out for that one and see how that space changes. And we move on to IoT devices. So as we mentioned, to do your data analytics, predictive analytics, you need these IoT devices to collect as much data as possible. And I think, they're only going to get more and more sophisticated over time. You'd start to get these IoT devices to track a lot of different areas for you to get a very good insight into what's actually happening in your supply chain. Then finally, we move down onto drones. So I know there's quite a few companies kind of pushing the boundaries of technology for drones. They're getting a lot faster. You can carry a lot heavier loads. I think just drones in general, we'll start to see a lot more regulation, and these kind of technologies get more utilized. It's a lot more cost efficient, it's faster. So definitely an area which is improving and will continue to improve. How are LogTech applications changing? So obviously over the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen a lot of changes in supply chain technology. As I mentioned, I do feel that applications and the industry as a whole, there's a lot more connectivity between systems, a lot more data which is being transferred. So that's why we believe that systems are being built for integration, whether that's from an API perspective, or just the languages in which the data can get transferred. All of these kind of things come together so that systems are built for integration. That also means that they're now starting to get built for developers. So you'll see a lot of companies providing comprehensive documentation, software development kits, to kind of make that integration process a lot smoother. And as the kind of industry matures, and there's a lot more companies which are adopting these kind of technologies, users will have a lot more customization requests, feature requests, and their ideas about what kind of systems they want to use. So you start to see applications being built in a more user customization friendly way. So the users can kind of configure these applications to fit their existing operational processes, rather than having to change their operational processes entirely, and also be able to build, if they wanted to, new features directly into these kind of existing softwares. So it's becoming a more user orientated kind of model, and then that rolls into the pay-per-use methodology, and then building applications, as I mentioned, from an API first basis. I wanted to do a quick comparison to the LogTech sector versus Fintech, and just highlight a few of the technologies within Fintech that maybe we'll start to see a lot more of in our industry as well. So on the left is just a kind of a timeline of investment into Fintech. So obviously, I feel that the LogTech industry is a little bit behind in comparison to Fintech, but I definitely do think we'll start to see a lot more investment into logistics technology, supply chain technology. So a few things I wanted to highlight is, as this kind of technology gets developed further, a lot more logistics and supply chain processes will become automated. once these systems become automated, you know, there's a lot more insight into the data, and then all of that predictive analytics comes in there. We then start to see the use of blockchain and cryptocurrencies in a more concrete kind of way than maybe we've seen before. I definitely think that's going to happen. And then obviously with the amount of risk which is taken on in supply chain and logistics and the technology, there's going to be a lot more emphasis on cybersecurity and regulation technology as well. So as the industry kind of progresses, definitely we'll see more of these kind of companies and regulations and technology to manage that risk for logistics providers, supply chain companies as well. And then the future of LogTech. So I definitely think, as we mentioned, there's going to be a lot more investment. The technology is going to get better. So that's going to foster a lot more innovation in our space. With that comes a lot of frameworks, which I think will start to pop up. So frameworks, I mean, you know, if instead of companies or developers having to rebuild key applications from a LogTech perspective from scratch, there'll be a lot more tools available for them to quickly kind of piece together applications in ways which fit their specific requirements or their specific needs. We go on to digital twins. So with the use of the IoT devices, you start to, and I think this is happening at the moment as well, start to create digital replicas of specific supply chain operation processes. You can then start to run advanced analytics and AIs which simulate specific scenarios which could change that operational process, or you know, identify risks in that supply chain process. So it's all about looking at these what if scenarios and trying to figure out ways to prepare as much as possible with the use of data and the technologies available to identify what these what if scenarios are, and to see how you can tackle them as they arise. And then, as I mentioned, intuitive APIs, a lot more documentation. APIs will become simpler to integrate with and more sophisticated as well. So the types of data which can get transferred, the speed in which that can happen, and the different languages will start to become, you know, more and more standardized. So yeah, the APIs in general will become a lot more intuitive. And then from a shared resources perspective, you know, I know in Singapore at the moment, a few of our clients have like co-working warehousing spaces. So instead of you having to invest in the whole warehousing architecture yourself, you know, you have this co-warehousing kind of setup. So as you scale, you can just increase your warehouse size. So a lot of these kind of shared resources from a technology perspective, and also from a physical perspective as well. I think that's collaboration is going to be key as we move forward.
As mentioned previously, I just wanted to quickly touch on Fleetbase, what we kind of do, and the products and services which we offer. So Fleetbase is a platform that provides logistics supply chain operation systems, and also provides tools which can be used to build supply chain and logistics applications as well. Just an overview of our services. So we have FleetOps, which is a multi-purpose last mile logistics operation system. Very customizable, very dynamic. So depending on the type of logistics operations you're carrying out, whether that's, you know, you're a courier service or you're a haulage company, you can actually configure your order flows, your activity status updates, and also down to your meta fields. You can configure that all in FleetOps. It's fully customizable, dynamic, and extendable as well. We then have mobile apps, data extraction modules, and we have a developer console which allows developers to utilize Fleetbase's API to actually build, test, debug supply chain applications that can be within Fleetbase. So you can actually include this into Fleetbase as an extension as well, or, you know, it could be a third-party application you build outside of Fleetbase. We also are starting to get into blockchain as well. So we have our own blockchain, which decentralized apps extensions can be built on top of. Users can opt to have smart contracts, backed documents, or their activity validated in the blockchain. And finally, we provide consultation services, for logistics and supply chain technologies. We've had experience different sectors of the supply chain, from haulage to bulk shipping to last mile. So yeah, we provide technology consulting services across the supply chain. That's it from me today. Thank you very much for, again, attending my session. I'll be in the networking sessions throughout today as well, so please don't hesitate to contact me or drop me an email. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll look forward to hearing the other speakers throughout today.